Campaign 2018 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, Marshfield Clinic Health System, and Campaign 2018 partner Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel.
Steve Boe of Taylor is a Democratic candidate in the 31st Senate District. Steve, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Thanks for having me today.
Now, you work for the Farm Bureau, and you live in which county?
I live in Jackson County.
Okay, but on your website, you list infrastructure as one of the major issues. So let's start with that. How would you resolve the impasse in the Capitol over highway funding?
Well, infrastructure is one of those subjects that no matter where I go within the district, it's one of those hot button issues. And I can tell you personally that I've got a road by me that's better than any roller coaster at Valley Fair. You go more than 35 and you're easily catching air, and if you go over 55, it's like the Dukes of Hazzard. And so no matter where you go, it's an issue that becomes prevalent on anybody. Talked with a farmer. There were 48 bridges within Trempealeau County alone that were downgraded in their bridge rating. That has impacts both in regards to tourism, in quality of life, and also our economy. He's looking at, that affects about 1,200 acres of his farm. Sure. And so he's going to have to take partial loads off or detour probably about 15 miles. Well, that has impacts on just the business, the fiscal end of it. And so we have to get real when it comes to infrastructure and how we fund it. And we have to look at all options.
Gas tax, registration fee, even the tolling word?
Tolling, yeah, I mean, we have to look at all options. And I am serious about that because one way or another, folks are paying for infrastructure dollars. The key is are they paying it through a gas tax? Are they paying it through fees? Or are they paying it to the mechanic? One way or another, dollars are leaving their pocketbooks. You know, when I talk with folks, they would rather just drive on good roads as opposed to having to get their car fixed on a regular basis.
Would you vote to increase the gas tax? If so, by how much?
By golly, we'd have to look at it and consider it. You know, the one thing that gives me a little bit of pause is we've obviously found some money for Foxconn. And so if we were able to find money for Foxconn, is there not a possible way to look at other sorts of revenues that are obviously available?
You brought up Foxconn. How would you have voted on that package of tax incentives when you consider state and local? It's more than $4 billion for Foxconn. Your vote?
There's nothing that infuriates me more than Foxconn, and part of that is just because of the area that I come from. I look at what are the impacts that Foxconn's going to have in our area. We're sending tax dollars down in southeast Wisconsin so that they can build Foxconn. Well, I have the question, and many of the people within the 31st District have the question of what about us? And that's definitely the sentiment that I hear back home is, you know, what about us? You know, we're worthy of some investments too. And that's, you know, where I'm kind of at is I'm not against investments and encouragement of business growth and development, but let's work with Wisconsinites and spread those resources across the state because I believe that we'll have a much bigger impact going that route as opposed to putting a lot of eggs in one basket.
Your campaign website, another priority is healthcare. Let's talk about healthcare in rural areas. Rural areas, older residents, household income, it's below the statewide average. Young people leaving, more and more health care being provided by Medicare and Medicaid. How do we maintain and improve rural health care?
Right. And, you know, before you kind of, I'll get to health care for a second, but you hit on something that's important to me, and you talked about people leaving. And that's part of the reason why I decided to run, because I thought of individuals like myself. I enjoyed a great education from a small K-12 school at Blair Taylor, and I did. I went to a four-year university and got educated beyond high school, worked in actually at the state capitol for 2.5 years, but I made the decision to come home because coming home was important to me. My hometown is incredibly important to me. Western Wisconsin is important to me. We need to work to try to encourage people to come back home to, you know, possibly start that new business. We need people to take a chance. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get involved and to run for state office, is I want to work and take on that challenge of trying to get people to come back home. And you had mentioned healthcare before. it's such a critical issue when it comes to not only our state, but in the folks in Western Wisconsin. We are blessed with, good quality healthcare providers. We obviously have Gunderson Lutheran and La Crosse and Mayo, Marshfield Clinic, but the key is whether that's affordable for folks to take and get involved in. I have a family that works in healthcare. I have a mother that's a nurse practitioner. I have a sister-in-law that's a head nurse up in Mayo. I get and I hear their frustrations in regards to some of the issues that we have regarding healthcare. And it's unfortunate that Governor Walker didn't take that Medicaid funding, because I think that would have made a real impact for folks throughout the state of Wisconsin.
Does the state government have a role in helping to recruit and retain some of these healthcare professionals, physicians, nurses, and other specialists?
We need those folks within our area, because, if they're not in our area, are we going to be traveling an hour plus? I mean, in all reality, we're traveling almost an hour as it is. I mean, where I'm located within the district, we're about 50 minutes from Eau Claire, 50 minutes to La Crosse. And so if we lose our local clinics, we're in a world of hurt. And so we have to do what we can to help shore up. Another issue regarding healthcare is nursing homes. I talked with a mayor up in Spring Valley yesterday, and she is desperately looking for answers to help with nursing homes because they're in dire need of some additional funding just to maintain what they have. And, if we don't have a place for our elderly to go to, where are they going? Because it's important to have them locally situated, because you want family to be able to see them. You want people to be able to come in and say hi, because that's number one, an important part of the quality of life. And it's good for your psyche.
So the state government should provide incentives to keep and retain some of these medical professionals.
I believe if you talk to the folks back home, that they would view that as a very critical and important issue that they would advocate for.
Local governments have been living with levy limits since about 2006. Some local officials say those levy limits hurt their ability to provide local services. Is it time to loosen, that's a better term, loosen levy limits, or get rid of them?
When I talk to the locals back home, they're elected for a reason. They're elected because the folks within their community believe that they are good decision makers. But yet, Republicans in the state legislature have taken many of the rights and abilities for them to do what they need to do. And I hear that in regards to local levy limits. I mean, the folks back home want to fix roads. It's not that they're just kind of sitting on their hands. They want to do it, but they're tied in two different ways. Their money has been decreased, and they also don't have the availability to raise the funds locally to fix these roads. We've also seen it in regards to schools, where schools, look at the number of schools that have had to go to referendum. Even within our area here in Western Wisconsin, they're constantly having to go to referendum just to simply function. And we have to do more so that, they're not going to the locals.
Has Blair Taylor gone to referendums?
We have gone to referendum for a school project here a few years ago, but we've had a number of local schools that have gone to referendum just to maintain their identity.
Well, the current state budget does increase spending on K-12 schools. My question is, does it increase it enough? Do we need another major infusion of state aid? If so, how would you pay for it?
Right, but it increased 200 based upon massive cuts that we've seen through previous years. So, if I took $100 from you and gave you 20 back, did I really give you 20? Or am I still shorting you $80?
So we need more state aid for public schools?
I believe that we need to do more.
How would you pay for it?
We have to look at all the resources, and we have to look at where we can take some cuts in certain areas, and maybe look at areas where we have to gain some revenue. But if you talk to anybody back in the district, schools are just a vital function of our community. I come from the land of Blair Taylor, where basketball is incredibly important, and if you look at any school district, there's always that one certain sport or that one sort of activity that unites people, and it brings people together. And just imagine what our rural communities would be if we did not have that school. It would be night and day compared to where we're at right now.
Choice and charter programs have expanded. Started out in Milwaukee 25 or more years ago, then Racine, now statewide. What's your position on the choice and voucher programs?
I'm absolutely against vouchers because, number one,
do you want to freeze them or do you want to get rid of them?
I would actually prefer, particularly in our neck of the woods, I don't believe that there's a need for voucher schools in our neck of the woods. Because, as you alluded to, we have limited resources when it comes to education. And so anytime we're pulling money out of that pot to give to a private voucher school is less money that's going to a public school. And so I don't believe we are at the financial situation where we can afford to divvy up some of those funds into voucher schools.
With the school shootings, the tragic school shootings and the mass shootings like in Las Vegas, do we need to change Wisconsin gun laws?
Well, one of the things that I think that we need to do is look at mental health and create policies that would allow people to bring people to light that they have concerns about. I believe that we have a huge mental health crisis within this state and within this country, and we have to shine a light on it. And there's kind of the stigma that mental health gets, that you don't want to admit that you need some help, and we actually need to promote that and encourage people that when things are tough and when things are bad, it's okay to go and seek some help. And so I believe that mental health is a great way in which we can try to target some of these folks before they do something.
So focus on mental health programs and not change any gun laws?
At this point, I think that that's where we could probably get some more of our best bang for our buck, because somebody who is going to do something bad, I firmly believe will do something bad. And so the point of the matter is to try to get to that person before they get to the point of wanting to do something really bad.
UW system funding, we're in our 6th year of a tuition freeze on resident undergraduate tuition. Should the freeze be extended into a 7th and 8th year in the next state budget?
Well, in western Wisconsin, we're incredibly blessed because while we have UW Eau Claire within the district, UW Stoughton and UW River Falls, which is my alma mater, is literally a stone's throw from the district. River Falls is within the one township in Pierce County that's not in the district, and just north in Dunn County is UW Stoughton. And so, providing them with the adequate resources so that they can provide students with the education that's needed so that they can get a job in the workforce is incredibly important. And, talking with folks both up in Eau Claire and even some of my folks up in River Falls, they believe that additional resources are needed to help alleviate some of the issues regarding tuition.
So end the freeze in the next 2 years. A big focus, a big debate in the next state budget will be prisons. The prisons in Green Bay and Waupun were built in the 1800s. We're closing the juvenile prison in up north in Lincoln Hills. Do we need a new state prison?
By golly, we're spending a tremendous amount of money in regards to corrections. And I think we have to look at, are there alternatives to just jailing somebody? Because jailing somebody costs a tremendous amount of money. And I would be encouraged to look at this further to see what sort of programs, when it comes to kind of not outpatient, but, allowing them to be out into the workforce, but yet, get the help that they need. And any time that you build a prison, it's a tremendous amount of money. And I think we have to look at all avenues as far as options regarding that.
What about legalizing medical marijuana or legalizing the recreational use of marijuana, Steve?
Well, I've actually had a few people come up and talk to me about that, and they're very passionate about it. And I'm keeping an open mind about that. And part of it is we've seen kind of a shift in regards to the way that we look at marijuana. We've even seen how we look at hemp. Obviously, working with the organization that I do, hemp has been a big issue that we've been promoting. And so people are keeping an open mind when it comes to medical marijuana and the legalizing of that. The one thing that I'd like to throw out is, while I'm open-minded on that, I do want to keep in touch with local law enforcement to see whether, a bill that's drafted, whether they believe that it fits the needs of the area and that they can live with.
Having done interviews in Eau Claire yesterday, a number of candidates talked about the methamphetamine and the opioid and the heroin problems in the 31st District, in rural Wisconsin. We've passed a number of HOPE bills. What are the next steps we should take to fight these epidemics?
We have to do more, because the simple cost of what opioids are doing to our counties, not so much within the sheriff's department. I mean, it does have a cost there, but if you look at their human services, the number of kids that have gone into the foster program or that have been taken away at the county's expense is just astronomical. So as much of a personal problem as opioids are, it's also a fiscal problem for our counties. And so we have to do more to try to find a solution that actually gets people off those drugs. Treatment centers, if there's any way that we can get these folks the help that will actually work, we have to work forward on that.
Final question. The primary is August 14th. You have how many opponents?
There are two of us.
There are two. Okay. Differences between you and your primary opponents?
Well, I just think that I bring a unique opportunity and advantage to this race in regards to my location, being able to balance the needs of the rural area, but yet still strive for that progressive stance that we have within the state of Wisconsin. And so I believe that I'm the best and unique candidate to balance all those needs within our 31st Senate District.
Thank you. Steve Boe of Taylor is a Democratic candidate in the 31st Senate District. The primary is August 14th. Steve, thanks for talking to WisconsinEye.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.